Hello and welcome to the tutorial. So in this tutorial here we are going to explore a number of things. These are things we discussed in class last week, so I'm just going to press play and give you a look at what we're going to do. So here's my gun firing. When I press fire I need to turn off my muzzle flash, but I've got no bullet holes appearing. And that's because I have told Unity to only add bullet holes when I shoot at something with a tag metal, because the bullet holes are metal. Now what we've also got is a randomness to the bullet holes, so not all the same ones will appear. So I can shoot there. You can see I've got a shell that appears. Now my bullet holes float in space, so we'll chat about that in a minute. And there's my other bullet hole floating in space. So let's escape out of this. But so there's a number of things going on. First of all, we're limiting when the bullet hole appears to when it hits an object with a tag. We're instantiating sort of a shell coming out of the bullet. It's not very elegant, but it's effective. And then we're also, if we have another look here, we're having a look at there's a couple other things going on here. So just in terms of raw mechanics. So when I shoot these, I get a score. There's my score gone to 1 and score to 2, and in a similar way these guys have a health of 2, so I can shoot them twice before they'll disappear. And now I've got a score of 4. So we have just within this we have both non-player character health and we have player character score. So let's have a look at how all of this works. So we'll start with one of these guys, a target. Now this target is made from 2 cubes, and I've just changed the shape of them. I have imported 2 images. One is a JPEG of a target, and the other one we had already, which was the image of wood. I have done very little. I have just resized the 2 cubes and then dragged and dropped the image directly onto them. I've done nothing more than that, so they're extraordinarily basic. The cubes came with box colliders and renderers. Now they do have a script on them called target, which we'll look at in a moment. And you can see here I have my health stipulated as 2. I made a prefab of the target. So basically after I constructed it here, I dragged and dropped it into a prefab, and then it just means I can have lots of different instances of them. So I can come in here and I can give this one oh, that's interesting, my prefab doesn't have the script on it, so let's update my prefab. And now it has a script on it. So and we'll give this one a health of, say, I don't know, 10, so we can shoot it lots of times. So let's pop back into the game and play that game where we have one more target than we previously had, and this one has a health of 10. So we can shoot that guy and get rid of him, and that guy, and this guy we have to shoot a number of times before we can get rid of him. Oh, there we go, score 14. Okay. Now these are the cans, the shells that are rolling out from my gun. You can see they're still in the game. So I need to put a little script on them saying delete them after X number of seconds. So let's have a look at how this target works and how its script works. Now the script on this works in conjunction with, I have 2 scripts now, I don't want that. So the script on this works in conjunction with the script that's on the player. So we'll have a look at this script first. We'll open it up in monodevelop. So here we go. So the first thing is we've got our class, so our target. We have made a public float, which is health, and that obviously is specific to the object that it holds this script. So we can have some targets with a health of 2 and others with a health of 10, as we've seen. Now I've got a custom function called take damage, and this is sent from the script here, and it's this function here. So we send this message basically. So when we shoot and we have hit our target, we send a message. So this script is receiving a message, and the message is run as a function, and it's saying float amount. So this amount here is also written in here. I've got a variable, so take damage, and the amount of damage we take is a variable, and up here I've got a variable called damage. So here it's saying health, and we've given ourselves a health of 2, minus equals, so take away whatever amount of damage is added when this function is run. So we could over here have multiple versions of this, and or we can, as we test our gameplay, we can increase or decrease the amount of damage we inflict per shot. And then so this is going to decrease the damage. At the moment it's literally counting down in ones, and then we simply say if health equals or smaller than 0, then run this function die, and die is basically delete the game object. So this is fairly straightforward, this script. Now this script over here is the original script that we used, which was firing projectiles and not using Raycast, so we're not going to look at that today. Might as well have a look at this one now. So we have in our UI, I just added a button. Now I turned the button off, I rendered it inactive, so it's inactive, and the button has a piece of text on it. And what I could do is I could have, I could do lots of different things here, but basically I made a very simple script called text manager, and so what's written in here is irrelevant. That's going to be replaced, and it's replaced by what we tell it to replace it with in the script. So when I press play here, it'll say score 0. So let's have a quick look at that script that's on this here. So the script on the text manager, first of all we have to load in Unity engine.ui, or we can't reference text. I won't know what text is without this being loaded in, this library. So we have our text manager, and we declare a variable, which is a piece of text, and then we load it in at start. So we're saying the text that is a variable is get component text, which is what's, if I just move monodevelop here, so this is with a capital T, this is the component. And then we're saying in update, we're saying there is an integer, and it's a variable, and then we're going to call that variable new score. Now what is that score? And that is this score here. Now this score is held in this script, and it is a static, public static integer. Now because it is a static integer, it doesn't belong to this script, so I won't see this variable score in Unity in the inspector here. So this can be accessed from any object at any time. The only thing we need to do is we need to tell it where it is. So this is the name of the class, this is the name of the script. So we need to say on the script there is this variable, and then we can do something with it. So over here we're saying I'm declaring a new variable, and the new variable is this, which is our score. And then I say text.text equals this score here plus new score, and new score is this number. And we've kept it, it's declared as an integer over here, and it's an integer here. So text.text equals whatever we want to write in here. It could be high score, new score, whatever, plus this variable, this public static variable. Now that brings us to this script. Now I've added a good few things in here, so let's have a look at all of them if we can. So the first thing we've added in is in the last raycast we said this. If the raycast hits something, then do something else. We've added this extra kind of clause in here. We've added an and to the if statement. We're saying and if hit, and we've declared that here as a raycast hit, if hit.transform that tag equals metal. So we're saying only do the next set of instructions if the object that we've hit with the raycast contains that tag. Now what I should do is take that, I'm going to Control C, delete it, and then put that in here. And that means that we'll only get our muzzle flare after we've hit an item that has the tag metal. There we go. Hit save. So and we run this function when we press fire. So we just did, and we were running our animation. So when I press fire, declare a raycast hit, and I've said it's only only do something if the raycast is positive, in range, and if the item I hit has the tag metal. If it does, do all of the following. So the first thing we're going to do is instantiate the bullet hole. Now we have this interesting little addition to the instantiate function. So up here I've said I have a variable called a bullet hole, and I've told it it's a game object, and then I've added these two brackets, and they make the game object an array, and an array is just a list. So instead of instantiating one object, I'm instantiating a list of objects. So what that actually means in terms of how it's implemented in the game, we're saying random.range 0 to 2, which is actually 3 items, because it starts counting not at 1, it starts counting at 0. So we're saying instantiate any one of these 3 objects. So that just allows us, so when we're adding a bullet hole to the wall, instead of the same bullet hole being added every time and it having a repeat pattern, we can make 3 of them, or as many as we like. We could have 50, and this will randomly select one of that list and instantiate that one, and it just adds a level of sort of randomness to the game. So it's done all the time. But you'll have like a death animation, and you'll say random.range, like play one of these 5 death animations, just so everyone isn't exactly the same. So that's how you call a random event, which is not random obviously, it's just a list. So how many things are in the list? Well, we declare that in Unity. So let's have a flick over here for a second. So I had last week created this bullet hole prefab, so we've gone through how to make that. All I've done is duplicate it twice, so I've got 3 of them, and the only difference between them is this image texture. So this is what the first one looks like, this is what the second one looks like, similar but different, and this is what the third one looks like, again similar but different. So the 3 of them are exactly the same, except the texture on each one varies slightly. So then when I instantiate them, it's instantiating one of these 3. Now how do I tell it that there's only 3? Well, if I put in 0 here in the inspector, so this is the variable here, the game object, and the size of the array is set to 0, and I literally have no objects, so it will not instantiate a bullet hole. I could tell it that I had 20 of them, and then it'll give me 20 variables to put in. If I could have 20 here, but if I told it to only check in the range 0 to 2, even though over here I had 20, it would still only select from the first 3. So in this instance here we have only 3, so I'll type in 3. So now I have 3 elements to add, and the first element is bullet hole 1, second is bullet hole 2, and the third is bullet hole, no, let's do that again, bullet hole 3. So that's how we randomly instantiate objects. So we use this piece of code after we've declared our variable as an array, and then in the inspector we put in the number that corresponds to the number we have set in the code, and then we drag and drop each item into this placeholder here. Okay, so that's the main part of, or the main difference. We've added these 2 lines of code. These are just copied and pasted from that script, and these are to add in the can as like a bullet shell that falls out of the gun. So I'm not going to explain these 2 lines of code because we've done this 2 weeks ago. And then this bit's new, so let's have a very quick look at this. So this is a reference to this script. So what I'm saying here is I have a variable. So basically I'm getting this component target. So if I hit an object, so if the object that the raycast hits has the component target, so basically if I'm shooting stuff that doesn't have this script on it, it won't work. But when I do hit something that has this metal tag and has a script on it called target, then send this message to that script. This is basically a negative question. It's basically saying, so if the target is not there, so this is not equal to null, and null is obviously nothing. So if the target is not equal to nothing, so i.e. if it's hit something, if it's a positive response, then do these 2 things. The 2 things are send a message. So I'm going to send a message to that script saying, take damage. And very simply, I'm going to say add 1 to my score. So score ++. And my score is here as my public static variable, which then will be updated here. Okay, so that's quite a bit in that, quite a few changes from what we did the last time. So this is, what I'm going through here is just sort of a reference, so you can see what item each script is on. So the text manager is literally on the text object. The target script is on the target, and then the character controller script with the raycast is on the player rig. So we will hopefully construct this and get it working in class. So that's enough for now. Thank you.